Hey guys, back again. It has been a long time since I have shot a video for the channel, and sorry about that, but hey, you know how it is. I built this car to drive, and so most of the time I'm driving it and not so much interested in trying to film it. But this has been a really big year for this car. A lot of things have happened since the last video I shot. In fact, we've kind of reworked a lot of the car. So where we left off, I was doing my first drive after getting the 2-liter built and put in. That engine is great. I have had no problems with it. It's been a great build. But I was having the same problems I was having before. So it really confused me as to why I just couldn't make the car run correctly. So after some kind of mulling it over and some frustration and going back and forth on what to do about it with my wife, we kind of decided, well, you know, like it just isn't worth putting our time in with the factory ECU, because we could not figure out where the problem with the car was, and we knew it was an issue with the car somewhere, not with the ECU, because it was, I don't know, we tried different ECUs, we tried a bunch of different things, and it just had to be something with the car. So it was kind of one of those, well, you know, if we do put an aftermarket ECU in, will it be a waste of money? No, because it's still going to add features, and it'll help us figure out where the problem with the wiring is, because you can see the raw sensor outputs. And so what we decided to do was we put some cash aside for a little bit and pulled some things off the car and sold some things, and we ended up, you see I don't have gauges here anymore. Those are removed, and in their place we have a Haltech Elite 1500. So I was really excited to get that, and along with that I did a bunch of other things as well. So I have the Haltech can hub, which we have installed in there as well. We've got the Haltech wideband kit, which means I was able to completely remove all narrowband sensors from the car, so we don't have a narrowband feeding signal to the ECU and then a wideband gauge completely separate. We've actually got the wideband as part of, well, it's all the O2 readings for the car is the wideband now. So we've got a much higher resolution signal going into the ECU, which is pretty sick. I also got the Haltech can gauge here, which I have configured to 4 outputs. I still wanted a boost gauge, so I ended up getting the Defi Red Racer gauge, and it's a ghost number gauge, so you can see when it's off it's mostly just blank, and then when we key on, then it lights up, and then we've got our Haltech OLED display over here. And I have a problem with it. I still need to sort out, not with the gauge, but with the one of the sensors. So I got the Haltech dual oil pressure and oil temperature sensor, and that's plumbed in. Water temperature I don't need to monitor anymore. I mean, I do monitor it on here, but I didn't need a sender anymore, I guess is what I should say, because the Haltech reads the factory water temperature sensor, so that was enough. But so before I had boost over here, and then oil pressure, oil temperature, and water temperature. Now I've got my, hang on, that's not the right one. Okay, here we go. So I've got my wideband here, which I guess this is where the wideband used to be. So I've got my wideband here, I've got my oil pressure, oil temperatures on another page, I've got my coolant temperature, so my water temperature, and then my ethanol content sensor, because yes, the car is now on flex fuel. Yeah, like I said, we did a lot of work to this car over the last couple of months. Made huge progress on it. Another thing that I have done is I've got an Android head unit here. This is the Etoto A6 Pro. It's not the most expensive head unit, but I am extremely impressed with it for what it is. It's got dual Bluetooth, dual Wi-Fi, GPS. It's got all kinds of stuff. I mean, the thing is just great. And then the reason I wanted to go Android here, besides just having the ability to run whatever I want on it, is so I can also run torque. And this is my fault. I ordered the wrong part number, but I also got the Haltech 2 OBD2 reader, and using a Wi-Fi OBD2 or a Bluetooth OBD2, I can output gauges to display on the head unit. So pretty much I can see whatever I want on the ECU just between this and the CAN gauge up here. This is where all the really mission critical stuff goes, and then I can see whatever else I want down here, even check engine lights if I need to. So another small mod I did, I changed the shift knob. The Civic Type R knob, replica knob that I had in here, was a gift from my parents. It was the very first thing that I did to this car, was change the shift knob, and that shift knob has stayed in the car. But I'm more of a fan of spherical shift knobs, and ultimately the plan is to put a CAE Ultra shifter in this car, and that doesn't even use a knob, but I like a really weighted knob. So what I decided to do, rather than buying a ridiculously expensive weighted shift knob, I bought this acrylic marble knob on Amazon, which is a pretty cool little shift knob. But then I used a Dremel and hollowed it out, and then melted down some lead fishing weights and poured the lead in. And yeah, so I made my own DIY weighted shift knob, and yeah, I'm really happy with it. So that's, I think, more or less everything on the interior side. But yeah, big difference that all of this stuff is made. And this thing right here, using that, I was able to finally figure out what the problem with the car was. If I can get out of here without dinging my Subaru. So it ended up, I had a twofold problem with this car. And what it ended up being, one was the knock sensor. Some of you guys who are familiar with tuning Evos or DSMs might already know, but the knock sensors from the factory on these cars are calibrated for a very specific resonance. And once you start changing stuff up on the engines, they just don't do much for you. So this, obviously is a built engine. Nothing is original in the bottom end. There's no balance shafts, obviously. So, it completely was getting a bad signal on the knock sensor. And what was happening was it was pulling timing out, and that was throwing my tune off, but it was doing it so quickly that you're pulling timing out and putting timing back in, that couldn't really see it, I guess. It just wasn't coming up correctly in the logs, and it just wasn't good. So one of the things the Haltech allowed me to do was I now have a Bosch knock sensor on the car, and it's a much more modern style of knock sensor that has a lot better reed pattern. So changing that over helped a lot. But I think the biggest thing actually I found was with the air conditioning wiring. And weirdly, you wouldn't think this would be an issue, but it would only happen when the air conditioning was turned off. And I think that this was my problem before. So and I know that it was an issue because when I would shut the air conditioning off, the revs would jump up and then it would rev bounce like what a DSM does when it has a vacuum leak. But I knew I didn't have a vacuum leak, so I was like, man, what is the deal? Well, it turns out that when I switched to the Evo 8 style wiring, it handles things a little bit differently than the old school Evo wiring or Mirage wiring does. So there's a relay over here that closes to enable the compressor down here, and the power wire for the compressor and the 12 volt coming into the relay were correct. But instead of one side of the relay being grounded and then the other side being powered to close the relay, when you would, well, both sides were seeing power, which is weird because it was working. But when you would turn it on, somehow it was grounding through one of the sides that had power. I don't understand how that was working that way, but it was. And so it would work, and there was no indication that there was any kind of problem there. But both sides of that relay were seeing 12 volts. So all I ended up having to do, and if you look at the ECU pinout, there's two air conditioning wires that control the relay. One of them is presumably what I thought was the input from the controller. So when you hit the power button, or the button to turn on the air conditioning, it sent out a 12 volt signal to the ECU. And then presumably the other one was the signal output from the ECU down into the compressor. But that's not how it worked. So 12 volts, when you would turn the air conditioning on, would get sent to the compressor on one side, and then on the other side, the ECU on the side that was supposed to be the output to the compressor was also sending 12 volts. So that was both sides of the relay getting 12 volts whenever you would turn the AC on. Well, then when you would turn it off, one side would be powered and the other side wouldn't, and then it would feed power into the system where it wasn't supposed to be going. So it was fine when the AC was on, but as soon as you would turn it off, power would feed back through the relay, going where it shouldn't go. And again, I don't even really understand why that would be the case, because the relay would open, so I don't really get it. But all I ended up having to do to fix that issue was clipping I think it was the output wire where the Evo 8 is supposed to send a signal out to the ECU, and then where the wiring harness was coming in, I grounded that side, and then I just put a cap on the side coming out of the ECU, and that completely fixed all of the issues with the car. I knew it was going to be some really stupid issue, and sure enough, it was. So that has completely fixed the car, and my goodness, it made a huge difference drivability wise. So again, you can see I've got a wideband sensor here now. That is straight to the Haltech. That's the only O2 sensor there is. I've got my ethanol content sensor here, plus the sending unit for the Defi boost gauge. I also put in an Evo throttle cable, which is much shorter. The old one would wrap out around, come all the way out here, and then back around in. All I had to do for that was make a custom bracket. So that was something else I did. Just recently put the fog lights on the car and the crash beam, so that is all together and working. The bumper obviously is still not completely stripped. That is something that I'm getting ready to work on. I'm hopefully going to be putting this bumper on the car this winter, so we will see on that. But I also need to redo some of the headlights. The switchback strips in there were cheap eBay special lights, and those have stopped working very well, so I need to go through and put better ones in there. I also need to put better projectors in, so that's going to be something that I do probably as well, all at the same time. But yeah, it's just it's going to be a process. I'm probably going to be changing the turbocharger out this winter finally, now that the car is running properly. One of my buddies has the turbo that I would like to run, and he is going to be upgrading his entire kit. So I'm planning on swapping that out this winter. And yeah, just lots of big stuff happening. Considering going to a drive-by-wire throttle body, there's so many options opened up to me with this Haltech. So anti-lag on a switch. I've got rolling anti-lag working with the intercooler sprayer button that's in the center console. Just a lot. We've gotten a lot done. I am just beyond thrilled with where the car is now. As soon as we get the bumper painted, I will be just about ready to call this car done. Maybe not like finished, because there's always more stuff that I'd like to do to it, you know, with the turbo kit, bringing it a little bit more up to date. I want to do a bunch of work to the interior. I want to dynamat it and put better seats in, maybe put a back half roll cage in, stuff like that. So it may not be a finished project, but it will be a more or less finished car. So yeah, it's really come a long way, and I'm pretty excited about it. So hopefully we'll be taking the car out for some drives here soon. We bought a GoPro recently, so we should be able to get some in-car footage, and then you can actually hear the thing. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. Lots of exciting stuff coming on the horizon. So anyway, that's all I've got for you guys right now. So yeah, I guess just look forward to more. See you next time.